wrap up. And it was a very mixed reading month. I felt like I was either like really elated with the reading that I was doing, or I was really bored. At the very beginning of the month, I finished out The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. I almost finished it like at the end of April, but I ended up finishing it the very beginning of May, and by far I enjoyed this 5th installment in the Wheel of Time series so much. And yeah, the character development in this is phenomenal. I think for character readers, this is a series that's a really nice balance between character development and world building and plot. And there were 2 characters, Loyal, who is an Ogier, and he's like the book lover of this series, and he's reading constantly, and even on all these quests that he's going on, he makes room in his luggage for books, and he was not in this book, unfortunately, so I did miss him. And then also one of the main characters, Perrin, is not featured in this book. So I missed those 2 characters, but really enjoyed the fast pace of this one. There was very little like ebbing in this. It really felt just like, you know, things constantly happening and just always keeping me guessing, and I can't wait to get to the next installment. So The Fires of Heaven was definitely worth the time, and it was really great doing a lot of the reading during the Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I think I got like 600 pages, not on that whole day, but that whole weekend I got 600 pages. So then that only left, you know, a third of the book left, which is a big deal when you're reading one this thick. So really enjoyed that, and I'm glad I am, you know, continuing on with that series. I took like a year-long break, but glad that I'm doing it more now. Then a buddy read that I did that was so highly enjoyable was Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. This was in a week that I was feeling kind of reading slumpy, and I just totally took a break, binge watched the whole first season of House of Eliot, and it was just what the doctor ordered. I just, you know, was watching House of Eliot with most of my free time, reading I think it was 4 chapters a day of this with Mel and discussing, and we were both just very charmed by this. The only other Barbara Pym I had read was Quartet in Autumn, and that one I definitely enjoyed, but this one just swept me off my feet. It makes me really want to try out some more Barbara Pym. So I just really enjoyed this. It's about these 2 women who are renting out a flat, and they share a bathroom. It's a, you know, a smaller place, and the one is there with her husband, and then the other woman is single, and it's just about their relationship. But then mainly the main character, whose name escapes me, Mildred Lathbury, and kind of all her relationships and how she's navigating just everything happening in her life. But it's just very also quaint and intimate. You get to see like them going to little church functions, or her going to meet someone for a coffee. So it was a really great character-based story, and I definitely want to read some more Barbara Pym, and Mel and I are planning on reading some more as buddy reads, which will be lovely. And then the next one that I read was a middling mystery, unfortunately, and that was Pagan Spring by G.M. Malliot. This is the 3rd in the Max Tudor series, and for some reason this one just did not captivate me. So far, the first one I was so on. The second one, which was the Fatal Winter, absolutely loved that one. It totally like blew me away. But then this 3rd installment, the Pagan Spring, I don't know. It was, I think because in mysteries where there are books that are about crimes that happened a long time in the past, they can only interest me if the person travels directly to the location where that crime happened. That's what happened in Maisie Dobbs, and I can really be still interested in tracking. But in this, and then also in Charles Finch's The September Society, when they're just talking about this crime that's gone a long time, it's just a lot of dialogue, not quite enough action for me. So I enjoyed it, but I was very ready to be done with it by the time I got to the end of it. So like I said, May was very much so a mixed bag as far as reading goes. Then a mystery that I really did enjoy immensely is The Impersonator by Mary Miley. This is set in the Roaring 20s in the Midwest, and It's really special because it is basically a retelling of Brat Farrar by Josephine Tey, which I had read the month before, and I didn't even know, this was just on my list of mysteries I wanted to try. I didn't even know this was a retelling of that, but Mary Miley, who wrote it, just really loves Brat Farrar. And so it was really great to see how she changed the lead from a male to a female so seamlessly, and she really made the family that you know, this girl was trying to make her way into really unique. And so in case you didn't remember or you hadn't heard me talk about Brat Farrar in that, and then in the Impersonator, there is a cousin who is supposed to have died years and years ago, but they never found a body. They just disappeared. So then someone who is not that person comes back years later and says, you know, they want the inheritance and they're them and they just ran away from home. And yeah, just very interesting, and I really enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be picking up the next in the Roaring Twenties Mystery Series by Mary Miley. Then one that was kind of a spontaneous pick but really enjoyable is At Home in the World by Tish Oxenreider, and I had heard about this from Anne Vogel over at the Modern Mrs. Darcy, and it is about Tish and her husband Kyle, who decide to drop everything for a year and go with their 3 kids who are like 10, 7, and 4, I think, and travel all over the globe for a whole year. And it's really great just how much of like go-getters they are, even with kids. And it was a really fun little window into each country. Each chapter was at most like 20 pages, so it was really neat to kind of just to get to see. They start out in China, and then eventually they're in Africa and Australia, and they move on into Europe, and it was just really great to see kind of the cool things they were able to see, but also her kind of internalizing reflections on their time, you know, traveling all over. And yeah, it was really neat window into different cultures and countries, and kind of the beautiful people that you will meet all over the world, and that hospitality is a global thing. And, you know, we're all just human beings, and we all love to have some place to call home. So yeah, altogether a very engaging read, and rewarding one. So if you are interested in armchair travel, as they're calling it nowadays, I do recommend that one. Next on the list, which was a delightful audiobook that I sort of listened to bits and pieces the same week that I was in the reading slump reading Excellent Women, and that is My Life in France by Julia Child. This was so much more enjoyable than I was anticipating. It is written by Julia Child, the famous chef who wrote the book, collaborated on the book, Mastering the Art of French Cooking, and there are 2 volumes to that. And basically, throughout this, you're kind of getting her life story, you know, from the time that she's like 0 to 35, and you're getting some background there. But then you're really getting when she got married at 35 to Paul Child, and they moved to France. He had a position for the government and working, you know, with like US-France relations. Anyhow, it's about her basically discovery of French food, and that she is an amazing cook. She goes to the famous French school, Le Cordon Bleu, and it's just a really excellent story, and told so well, and just really great to see her love of food, and it's really her love language, how she, you know, shows hospitality to friends and cooks them this amazing food, and that's how she shows people that she cares about them. So really engaging, enjoyable, and I enjoyed it. Just, I was surprised at how much it interested me, and I enjoyed it since I don't read all that much nonfiction. Next on the list, I read the next in the Barsetshire series, Pomfret Towers by Angela Thirkell. This was on my spring TBR, and I think this is actually the one that I enjoyed the most. And 2 of the main characters are Alice and Guy Barton. They are a brother and sister, and they are invited to stay for a holiday at Pomfret Towers. And so, of course, there's going to be just some quirky scenarios that happen. So many like little quippy lines, and as always, just really enjoyable. Angela Thirkell. I zoomed through this, and like I said, it was, I think, my favorite thus far out of the Barsetshire series. It was also fun because Alice and Guy's mother is an author, But she's very like down to earth, doesn't take herself too seriously, and her books just have been like critically acclaimed. And then there is another author staying at Pomfret Towers at the same time, and she just takes herself so seriously, and her novels are quite melodramatic, and so it's really funny to see kind of those two personalities contrasted. Altogether highly enjoyable. I really do love Angela Thirkle, and I really do recommend this one. Next, I read one that is now a new favorite. I cannot wait to reread this one over and over and over again, and that is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. And this cover, to me, just matches how beautiful this story is. And I did a whole review of this, and I will link it down below, but definitely a new favorite, and I will be rereading it sooner rather than later. Then a mystery that was definitely a mixed bag for me, not a very interesting cover to look at, but it's The Man in the Queue by Josephine Tey. Josephine Tey is a Golden Age author that I do like, but I just found, I Buddy read this with Kate from the novel Nomad, and she had a very similar mixed experience of this. We just found that it felt really challenging to read this up until a certain point when they traveled to Scotland, and it was very exciting and we couldn't put it down, and then it just kind of went back to being not as interesting again. Very well written, you know, totally so many little like quippy observations and just very clever writing like a lot of Golden Age writers are, but altogether, it's like it was a steady 3 stars, and then it dipped up to a 4 stars, then it just dipped back down to 3 stars. The premise is very interesting. There are lots of people waiting in line to go see a show, and they're very like close together, like cramped, pushed. The line is very crowded, and once the line starts to actually move and they're letting people into the show, one of the men who was waiting in line sort of like crumples over and falls on the floor, and people realize he's dead. He'd been murdered while he was in line. So it's up to Inspector Alan Grant to figure it out. So altogether, I did not enjoy this as much as Brett Farrar or Daughter of Time, which is later on in the Alan Grant series, but I still want to read more from the Alan Grant series. Next was one that was such a gem and a delight and so easy to read, was Mrs. Arris Goes to Paris by Paul Gallico. This is about a British char lady who, upon seeing in person her first Dior dress ever, decides that she will save up, scrimp and save every last possible penny and travel to Paris, France, and buy a Dior dress. And it's just about her journey there, and it's so charming. Mrs. Arris is a lovely character, and she just really tells it how it is and says what she thinks, and I'm really happy. I also own Mrs. Heiress Goes to Parliament and Mrs. Heiress Goes to Moscow. There's one other one in the series that I don't own, but I was glad that I enjoyed the character of Mrs. Arris so much, because then, you know, the other in the series, even though they aren't set in Paris, they're the same character. And I also found it really neat to see kind of how some of the people that she ends up interacting with when she goes to Paris are, she just charms them all. They're maybe a little bit rough around the edges, but she's able to charm everyone she comes into contact with, and it's just altogether just a lovely, lovely lady. So really happy that I finally got around to reading this. Then another one that was kind of a mixed bag was The Crow Trap by Anne Cleeves. I still don't know how to feel about this. It was really hard to get into, so it really threw off my reading. I'm like annoyed about that I let it throw off my reading so much. And then once I was into it, I was definitely into it, but it was still just slow going. I think it's got all the psychological elements that I love. It's got really sharp, clever writing. But it has the same kind of like sharp, clever writing that a Lenley by Elizabeth George would have, but it doesn't have. Elizabeth George has all that, and then awesome character development and real like connection to characters, whereas this, I didn't feel like that. In addition to that, Vera, who is the detective in this, she comes to investigate. There is a girl who committed suicide who was working on this agricultural study, and they're all living in a house together. And then a couple weeks later, one of the other girls who was helping with the agricultural study is murdered. And so Vera comes to investigate. And if any of you have seen the 1970s show Columbo with Peter Falk, you know, as the like playing Columbo. That's what it felt like. It was really weird. It was like a hard-boiled, more psychological mystery, but then Vera's this like bumbling, kind of clumsy detective and just like spouts off whatever she's thinking, kind of like featherbrained almost. It just really felt like Columbo. And so to me, that fits more like 1970s TV show or like a cozy. It's like, I didn't know how to piece together her personality being in that kind. So yeah, it was just a mixed bag. And I think if I hadn't read the Linley series before reading this, I would have liked it more. I think I am intrigued enough to try the next one, but I am a little miffed that it threw off my reading so much and then I didn't get as much of a reward in the end as I thought I would have. Then moving on to a mystery that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and I think part of the reason I was so excited about it is I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, and that is Sidney Chambers and the Shadow of Death by James Runcie. This is the first in the Grantchester series. Now, the TV series, the more seasons that I watched, the more and more disillusioned I became. You can just tell it has like such an agenda and it just feels very moralizing. And so I was kind of just wanting to read this. Like, I got it for $1 at a library sale, and I was basically wanting to read it to confirm that I in fact would not like the books. But I liked this so much, like exponentially more than the TV series, I'm really happy to say. And a lot of the things that I thought were like trashy elements that they add in the TV show are not in the books at all. So I was very pleasantly surprised by this. Another part and aspect of this that I was somewhat apprehensive about is that it's a vignette style. So I thought I kind of wouldn't feel like I got to know characters that well in that, but it's very much character driven. And so it's really neat because there's like 7 little different vignettes, little mysteries that are solved in this. And I think the first 3 in the series are all written in the vignette style. And then the last 3 I think are more overarching mysteries. And I ended up really enjoying the vignette style because it was really great. It was like a nice little mystery to get through and I could get through it easily in one session. And it was, yeah, altogether delightful. I find Sidney Grantchester to be very winsome and it's great. He's just really, he wants to do good by, you know, his church and by the people he's investigating these crimes for. He just wants to do the right thing and he wants the best for people. Just a very winsome character. And Amanda Kendall in this is like a cajillion times better. She's just kind of a doormat in the series and the TV series, and in this she's so interesting. She's an art expert and she really stands up for herself and makes her own decisions and calls about her life, and yeah, just altogether a more appealing person. So I'm happy to say I really enjoyed this. And Kate from the novel Nomad, if I didn't say, we did this as a buddy read and we both really enjoyed it and we're surprised at how much we liked the vignette style. I think also because it's just so fresh and new and different than anything else we read. Okay, then in my notebook, just making sure I don't want to miss any books that I read, then Miss Rosamund Pilcher's Wild Mountain Thyme. Rosamund Pilcher is a kindred spirit. I was really pleased at how much I enjoyed this despite the brevity of this. I've run out of, she has 4 like 600, 700 page books and I have run out of those. So now I only have the shorter ones, but I enjoyed this a lot more than I was anticipating. She's able to just write such engaging characters in such a short amount of time. I was very impressed. And this one is about Victoria Bradshaw. And she had been involved with a man named Oliver who is like a playwright. And he just abandons her, just out of the blue, tells her that he's getting married. And then a few years later, he shows up with his 2-year-old son on her doorstep and kind of whisks her off to Scotland. And Victoria Bradshaw, though the main character, she was not quite as appealing main character as Judith from Coming Home, or what is her name? The main character from The Shell Seekers, who I can't remember right now. I'm just remembering her kids calling her, you know, Mama. But anyhow, not quite as like alluring or appealing of a main character, but just her stories sweep me away and I just love them so much. They're so engaging. And then another one that was a sort of meh read, and this is one that was on my summer TBR, and I didn't have any other audiobooks available at the time, so I figured I'd just get a head start, and I did The Enchanted Castle by E. Nesbit. I think that if you kind of like the plot device of eventually they find this magic ring and different things keep happening because of the magic ring, I think if you find that as a very interesting plot device, then you'll find this book interesting. But to me, that's only like a so-so plot device, and it just got so repetitive. It just, oh look, they made a mistake with the ring again. Oh look, they made a mistake with the ring again. I think it's my personality, and I think this is one, unfortunately, that if I read as a child, I would have, if I had started out reading it and, you know, this was a reread now, I would have really enjoyed it. But I think, unfortunately, I've missed the boat. Although in a few years, you know, if I'm going to read this aloud to Peter in the evening before bedtime, I think I'll enjoy it more taking it just a chapter at a time. It's also, the writing was just, if the writing had been like very poetic, you know, and like romantic sounding, I think I would have been more into this book. But since the writing was just kind of straightforward and there wasn't as much like character development, engaging with the characters as I normally like, so then since it didn't have those two things, and then the plot device that was used over and over again, it just didn't interest me as much. So it was fun, but not one that I enjoyed reading for the first time as an adult. And those are all of the books that I read in May, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please let me know if you have read any of those and what you thought, and I will see you guys for another video soon. Bye!